Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Samuel Taylor Coleridge's long Gothic poem, Christabel. Now, I say a long poem. It is not as long as it was supposed to be. Coleridge only got to write the first two parts of Christabel. I think that the plan was for it to be at least 4 parts long. So we've got roughly the first half or less of what the poem was supposed to be. That being said, this remains one of the greatest documents in the demon lover genre. So if you're a lover of the demon lover genre, Christabel will be your jam. So we have 3 primary characters, really, in the first 2 parts. We start with sort of background on the sort of castle and a little bit of personal background about Sir Leoline. The reason I mention Sir Leoline specifically is because names are very important in Christabel. Sir Leoline is Christabel's father, and his name evokes the lion, which is a traditional symbol of valor, bravery, courage, and royalty or nobility. Then he has his daughter Christabel, who's actually sort of the main protagonist of the poem. Christabel, of course, her name probably would literally sort of mean something like the beauty of Christ, but it also verbally suggests Christ is able. So this is this very sort of Christian angelic type name. Now, Christabel, when the poem starts, is just out in the woods, wandering around, being like, oh, I wish I had a beloved. She's just out pining for a dude. Not any specific dude, some dude. Any dude. What she meets instead, or what she gets instead, is less a dude than it is a woman. A woman named Geraldine. Geraldine is also a significant name. It has important echoes. In the Germanic, Geraldine means something like rule by the spear or rule of the spear. And so it suggests themes of danger, violence, dominance, aggression, things like this. That one is not quite as sort of immediately clear as something like Christabel or Leoline. I had to look up what the meaning of the name Geraldine is. I don't know, maybe when Coleridge wrote this, people just fucking knew the meaning of the name Geraldine off the top of their head, but I did not. And I don't think most people do, if I'm honest. But, so Christabel is just wandering around the woods. She finds this woman, Geraldine, and Geraldine's all like, "Oh, woe is me! I'm in distress. I am literally a damsel in distress." And Christabel's like, "Well, I am also a damsel, but I will chivalrically save you from your distress." And what, in fact, Geraldine says, she explains what happened to her. She says, "My sire is of a noble line, and my name is Geraldine." Geraldine? I don't know. I would pronounce it Geraldine. Maybe it's actually pronounced Geraldine to fit with the rhyme scheme. I'm going to keep calling her Geraldine, but these are a lot of the poem is written in rhyming couplets, heroic couplets. 5 warriors seized me yestermorn, even me, a maid forlorn. They choked my cries with force and fright, and tied me on a palfrey white. The palfrey was as fleet as wind, and they rode furiously behind. Behind, perhaps, to maintain the rhyme scheme. They spurred amain, their steeds were white, and once we crossed the shade of night. As sure as heaven shall rescue me, I have no thought what men they be, nor do I know how long it is, for I have lain entranced, I wis. Since one, the tallest of the five, took me from the palfrey's back, a weary woman scarce alive. Some muttered words his comrades spoke, he placed me underneath this oak. He swore they would return with haste, whither they went I cannot tell. I thought I heard some minutes past sounds of a castle bell. Stretch forth thy hand, thus ended she, and help a wretched maid to flee. So basically Geraldine is like, yeah, I was minding my business in my father's castle. I was not doing any harm to these 5 fucking random dudes. And then they decided to just kidnap me and dump me in the woods. Why did they leave her unguarded? Don't know. Not important to the story. What is important to the story is that Christabel's like, okay, I will take you back to my father, Sir Leoline's castle. We'll have a wonderful sleep, and then we will get him to return you to your dad in the morning. Needless to say, it's a Gothic poem, a demon lover story. Things do not go quite to plan. So there's a series of things. There's a series of things that start throwing up red flags when they get to the castle. The first, we get this bit. They crossed the moat, and Christabel took the key that fitted well. A little door she opened straight, all in the middle of the gate. The gate that was ironed within and without, where an army in battle array had marched out. The lady sank belike through pain, and Christabel with might and main lifted her up a weary weight over the threshold of the gate. Then suddenly the lady rose again and moved as she were not in pain. So, the first bad sign is they come to a threshold. Many myths, legends, tales of dark forces, e.g. vampires as the most famous, indicates that they have a problem crossing thresholds without being invited. So the fact that she is stopped by a threshold is of concern. It also says, ironed within and without. Demons, witches, fae, a lot of traditional European mythological figures, particularly more antagonistic figures, have an aversion to iron. So the fact that once they get to this iron gate, Geraldine's like, oh, I'm not able to walk. I'm in such pain. Carry me over the threshold. And then once they get over the threshold, she's like, yep, I'm good. That's not ideal. That's a big red flag. Then Christabel's like, oh, we should fucking say a prayer to the Virgin Mary because she has rescued you from your tribulations. And Geraldine's like, or alternately, we could not do that. The fact that she refuses to pray, that's another sign that witch, demon, whatever it is. Because supposedly, witches, demons, whatever it is, are not able to pray, particularly to say things like the Lord's Prayer or the Hail Mary. That ain't good. Then they walk by Sir Leoline's dog, who's sleeping, and he's like, I mean, it literally is that. It literally just like a few lines where Coleridge is like, yeah, the dog growled in sleep at her. These animals are supposed to be able to sense the presence of evil, even when people have been blinded to it. Then they walk past some candles or torches or whatever it is that have burned out, and they're like, boom, back on fire. Geraldine's here. That should be a really significant red flag, and yet Christabel's like, well, that's the norm. Sometimes dead torches just burst back into flames. What are you going to do? Clearly not a sign of unholy shit going on. So, they go into Geraldine's room, they go into Christabel's room, and in once again what should have been a really obvious red flag, Geraldine has some sort of fit in which he demands that the protective spirit of Christabel's mother leave so that Geraldine can have Christabel to herself. Typically, in my experience, and I think I'm not alone in this, if you have a new roommate and they start trying to cast out the soul of your mom so they can have spiritual access to you, that's a bad thing. That's not a good sign. You don't want that in a roommate. That's good, like, life advice. If you're in college, for instance, that's put on the form when you're being assigned your roommate, someone who will not try and cast my mother's spirit out so that they can attack me with their demonic evil. Just, you don't want it. So that happens, but Christabel's just like, yeah, I'm not concerned about any of these things. Then, Geraldine's like, why don't you just go to sleep and I'll do some praying and then I will join you. Christabel can't sleep all that well. So she's kind of like tossing, turning. And then she sort of looks over to where Geraldine is. And then what it says here is, beneath the lamp the lady bowed and slowly rolled her eyes around, then drawing in her breath aloud, like one that shuddered, she unbound the cincture from beneath her breast. Her silken robe and inner vest dropped to her feet, and full in view, behold her bosom and half her side, a sight to dream of, not to tell. Oh, great, Coleridge, thanks for not telling us. Literally not giving us the piece of information that we kind of need here. Later in the poem, we do have a reference to her breast and her side being withered like that of a really old woman. What this is a witch's mark. This was a thing that was believed to exist, where basically, like, when a witch signed a pact with the devil, he would physically mark her somewhere on her body. And the idea was that it was a spot that was insensitive to pain. It was some kind of deformity, something like this, so that the devil could sort of claim that witch as his own. And actually, this was incredibly problematic because in witch trials, accused people would often be sort of stripped naked and then poked all over with a pin. And as soon as they found a spot where you didn't be like, ow, that hurts, they'd be like, yep, witch's mark. And it was incredibly problematic because realistically they didn't understand how things like nerves work. And so there are parts of people's body where you can poke them with a pin, and because they don't have sort of immediate nerve receptors in that tiny area, they won't feel it much. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So Geraldine is pretty obviously a witch or a demon or something. And she then sort of goes over to Christabel's bed, like wraps herself around Christabel. It's very clearly meant to be this sort of erotic scene in which these two young, sexy women, one of whom has a huge demon mark all over the side of her, are naked in bed together. Hey, you know what? Male poet's gonna male poet. Can't stop that. Fish gonna swim, birds gonna fly, as they say. Male poet's gonna write about demon lesbians. Cycle of life. But the more important element of this is that Geraldine is like, magic spell, you can't tell anyone what you've seen. Ha 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 ha. And so Christabel can't talk about what she's seen. The next day, interestingly enough, they get up, they go downstairs. Sir Leoline's like, whoa, there's this random woman in my castle. She's kind of sexy. I'm a bit into her. Christabel's not thrilled with that turn of events, particularly a bit later on when Geraldine looks at her and her eyes are snake's eyes. That sort of tips Christabel a bit over the edge, and she tries to get her dad to kick her out. But Sir Leoline does not want to kick Geraldine out of the castle for two reasons. One of which is he seems to be kind of into her, even though Geraldine is his daughter's age, and that's not ideal. But the other is that she is the daughter of Lord Roland de Vaux of Tiremaine. And the reason that matters is that in their youth, Sir Leoline and Lord Roland de Vaux of Tiremaine were BFFs, possibly same-sex lovers. There are some indications in the way that Coleridge talks about their relationship that they might have been romantically involved with one another, but we don't have enough information in what exists of the poem to really sort of say that for certain. What seems relatively clear to me is that there's something about the De Vaux of Tiremaine that Sir Leoline is real into.